Thank you.
So, today we're talking to Laura Trimajova, who has co-authored a piece on the Serbian census with Mina, NIKOLIC for Contemporary Southeastern Europe, our special issue on population censuses. So maybe you can tell us a little bit. You're looking at Serbia and you're looking at the 2002 census and the 2011 census. What are the main differences between those two censuses in your observations?
Good afternoon, Florian. So just a simple answer to your question would most likely be that the 2002 and 2011 census exercise in Serbia almost appears to be taking place in two different countries. So this was the basis on why Mina and I decided to take a look at this issue in Serbia, because in 2002, as you probably know, the political situation in the country is completely different to the political situation in Serbia in 2011. The second reason why we were looking at this particular case of the census-taking exercise in Serbia was because it shows different dynamics in the relationship between not only the majority versus the minority, but also in terms of how the census-taking exercise was conducted. Probably the biggest difference in this case would be that in 2011 it was completely, or perhaps not completely, but to a huge extent funded and assisted by the European Union. Another reason why I think it's interesting to look at the Serbian census in 2002 and 2011 is because it is a great laboratory of not only the domestic political situation in Serbia and how it influences an exercise that should be theoretically only a technical exercise, but also how the external factors, in this case the European Union, or as in the 2002 case, the OSCE, is involved in the dynamics of the census taking. So yeah, so I think the census in Serbia in 2002 and 2011 is interesting because it almost seems that it took place in two different countries with different dynamics.
There were, in fact, two different countries. I mean, purely legally speaking, yeah. Indeed. But you also note in the article how, because of the nature of different minorities in Serbia, and of course the minorities are the most sensitive issue when it comes to the census. What are the dynamics? I mean, because there's a wide range of different ways in which minorities in Serbia have responded to the census, from endorsement to boycott. What is the picture, especially in the last census, when it comes to the minorities' response to the census?
Exactly like you said. So I would just start by perhaps stating something that might be obvious to many, but perhaps not that obvious to the wider audience out there. Serbia has been portrayed and is seen as a more homogeneous country. This, I mean, compared to its neighbors such as Bosnia and Herzegovina, perhaps even other European member states. But the fact is that Serbia is not a homogeneous country. It has a substantial amount of minorities that have to maybe less or more of an active role in the, not only in the political environment of Serbia as a country, but also in the socioeconomic dynamics of the country. So first of all, we looked at the fact that let's pause for a second and see Serbia for what it really is, for a country that has many different minorities, many ethnic groups, many religious groups, subgroups. There's the whole issue with the Vojvodina dynamics, it being an autonomous region and all of that. So our general conclusion was that, and we had only the opportunity to take a look at a number of minorities, but our conclusion is that the Hungarian minority, for example, in 2002 and 2011, tested the census as an exercise. In 2011, perhaps they were even more active in participating. The Roma minority struggles with a completely different set of problems than any other minority in the country, or ethnic group for that matter, because we just can't estimate how many Roma people there are in Serbia, which is a huge problem if you think of it, because the Roma population is estimated to be 3 or 4 times as large as it is in the census. But comparing 2002 and 2011, the Roma population has increased its participation in the census-taking exercise by 40% in 2011. So that remains an interesting dynamic, despite the completely different set of problems that they have with these kind of exercises for obvious reasons, such as the population being illiterate, dispersed all over the country, not having a unified political agenda, etc., etc. We also looked at the Bosnian, or the formerly referred to Muslim community in Serbia, which again remains very dynamic because there are those who came as refugees from the Bosnian War, there are those who are, let's say, indigenous to Serbia proper. And we have seen that this, the Bosnian issue is more of an issue that's related to their kind of self-identification crisis, if I may even call it that. But again, at both occasions in 2002 and 2011, they have participated in the exercise. And then we come to the Albanian minority in Serbia, which in 2002 has participated in the census after heavy involvement from the OSCE. To make it very short, I think without the OSCE participation, this would not have been possible in 2002, due to obvious reasons, and most of them are linked to the kind of aftermath of the Kosovo 1999-2000 conflict.
Right.
And this completely changes, and this is basically the main finding of our paper in 2011, where one would expect that this would, this would just continue and the Albanian minority in Serbia would be engaged in the census-taking exercise. But the contrary happens, and in 2011 they boycott the census altogether. The reasons why, I can elaborate on this, but this is the main finding of the paper, is that something that we would expect the minority to continue on something that has been, let's say, more difficult in 2002, but yet the contrary happens. So.
I guess also this is an example where this domestic politics of census are connected to to the dynamics of census in neighboring Kosovo, of course, where there was the Serbian boycott, so probably there was some degree of reciprocity or something like that going on there, right, to explain this contestation.
Exactly, and this is then to basically state that census taking is not only a technical exercise. It is actually a very heavily politicized exercise, and it shouldn't be. I know this is far from ideal, but in the long term, we are aiming that for EU accession countries to be able to carry these kind of exercises. First of all, on their own. Second of all, without such heavy contestation. Third of all, without it becoming a political issue. Now, an interesting question, I mean, this paper does look at 2002 and 2011, but an interesting question will be to see what will happen in the next census round. So in 2021 approximately, or let's say 2019, 2020, when they start to prepare for the census, which is in a couple of years, that will be very interesting to see how the dynamics with the Albanian community play out in the south of Serbia.
I mean, again, as you mentioned, this kind of tension between the technical exercise, the way the EU understands it, and the UN and its guidelines, and the reality on the ground, which is highly politicized, highly emotional, is mostly due to the questions about identity. I mean, religion, language, ethnicity. Do you see that in the Serbian dynamics, the idea of having a census without those questions is conceivable, or is that kind of, because again, from the EU's perspective, the other data is much more relevant and interesting than the data on ethnicity, because again, for economic planning, social policy, you don't need to know whether somebody is a Serb or Hungarian. You need to know whether they are, which age they are, maybe which level of education they are. Do you see in the dynamics and the discussions in Serbia that this is even a conceivable possibility to stop asking the ethnic questions in the census, or is this so much part of the package that one can't just get that out of the understanding of what a census is about?
Well, this is an extremely interesting question. I guess my first answer would be depends on who you ask, right? If you ask policymakers in the EU, they will tell you, well, this shouldn't matter. But if you ask the majority of Serbs in Serbia, perhaps the answer would be something along the lines of, yeah, this doesn't really matter as much. I would like to have a census where the main aim of it is to ultimately lead to some sort of results that can help tailor economic and social policies better to the country. But if you ask minority members or people who come from minorities, they would say, well, we need this data because of our cultural, social rights, you know, books, religious rights, cultural rights, language rights, because not all of these communities in Serbia speak the same language, right? So I think this is part of the process. It's not going to change overnight. There's no way it can change overnight. It's only been a couple of years since, let's say, democracy has been consolidated in Serbia, this democracy consolidation and the level of trust between the majority and the minority and the central government. This is something that will take a bit more time, I think, to solidify. And until that happens, the minority questions is always going to be important in the census-taking issue, in the census-taking exercise.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. Well, Laura, thank you so much for your observations on
You're
the
welcome.
Serbian census. Of course, a lot more detail on the dynamics in the paper. So thank you for the paper and talking to us today.
Thank you very much, Florian. Talk to you soon. Bye.